Brattleboro Selectboard is next here on BCTV. This is Tim Johnson wishing all of you a very happy holiday season, a very busy one coming up. And this reminder, Brattleboro town offices are closed both Thursday and Friday. You'll be able to see the complete list of closings online at brattleboro.org. Tonight, the Brattleboro Select Board will, among other events, work as water and sewer commissioners and work on some changes to the proposed wastewater treatment plant upgrade. The monthly financials will be presented by Town Finance Director John O'Connor. Consideration of accepting a grant from the Vermont Emergency Management for hazard mitigation. Discussion of the archery building redevelopment. One of the two proposals has withdrawn, and the board will discuss that this evening. Consideration of the process for re-adopting the Downtown Improvement District. A public hearing on the town plan is scheduled, but it will be immediately continued to a later date and place. An appointment to the Tree Advisory Committee is scheduled tonight, and I see several members of the Brattleboro Reformer Christmas Stocking Board in our audience. No doubt a proclamation may be in order, so stay tuned. The Brattleboro Select Board is next here on BCTV.
And good evening. I would like to reconvene our second regularly scheduled meeting of November. We do know that the meeting has been officially warned. We have several minutes, as the Select Board has been busy the last few weeks, to approve. I'll accept a motion on the minutes for November 5th.
Can I make one motion covering all the minutes?
You certainly can.
I move to approve the minutes from November 5th, November 6th, November 7th,
13th,
and November 13th,
and 14th.
and November 14th as presented.
Any additions, corrections, deletions? Dora?
I actually have something for, where's the one from the last big meeting?
That would be the 6th regular, the Select Board meeting.
We can talk about the bus. There it is. Page 3. What I wanted in there was something that characterized that discussion, particularly Paula Melton's comments, because there's a lot of concerns about the changes to the bus schedule and the way it was done. One of the things that was brought up was that the changes didn't seem to be working for a lot of the regular users, and I wanted to make sure that that got in the record. So I just wrote up, she also spoke on how those changes are not working for her and many of the regular users. And she expressed a need to have a way for riders to give input, since many of them can't make an evening meeting. And I thought that was important to have as part of the record.
I accept those friendly amendment. Dora, will you get that language again?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Any other additions, corrections, deletions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 5-0. Chair's remarks. Only a few. I do know that Project Feed the Thousands kicked off their fundraising drive last week. Thanksgiving coming up Thursday. I know they have baskets in several of the supermarkets, and if you can contribute there, it's much appreciated. Also to the volunteers for the Thanksgiving dinner down at the River Garden. Thank you to all those people who donate product, money, and most importantly, their time. That is much appreciated. It's one of the things that makes Brattleboro a real special community. Other than that, Barb, I don't have anything. What do you have anything?
Yes. I have the unfortunate task tonight of letting the board and the folks at home know that Brattleboro lost one of its employees, passed away on early Monday morning. Steve Reynolds has been with the town for 23 years. In our utilities division. He started his work in 1989, and he was diagnosed with an illness in April of 2012 and passed away after a valiant fight for his life. And so my condolences to his family, his wife, his children, his extended family, and to really all who knew Steve. His loss has greatly impacted the town, in particular the Public Works Department.
Anything else?
Nope.
Select Board Committee reports. Dora?
Just one, the Wyndham Regional Commission has an annual dinner every year. It's usually at this time. And they've decided to cancel the annual dinner, which will actually save us some money, and have a regular meeting, which will be next Tuesday. And I think it's sort of a sign of the times that people don't do those formal sit-down things anymore. So we'll be looking to do a little more fun socializing as part of a meeting. And I just want to say that I participated a week ago Saturday with the Exit 1 project, did its daffodil planting. And for anybody who drove by during that time on Saturday morning, there were dozens of people up on the hill planting. The woman brought six students from the Kernhattan over to plant, and it was a lot of exciting and a lot of fun. And be looking forward to seeing the daffodils come up in the spring.
Very good. Public participation, an opportunity for you to speak about something that is not on our agenda here this evening. If you will raise your hand, I will call on you, and you can come up to the microphone, state your name and the town that you're from, and we'll give you about 2 minutes. But before we do that, we do have a proclamation. Tim, so that was a good observation on your part. And Mr. Chapman, if you would read the proclamation.
Sure, happy to. Delighted to. This is, well, I'm delighted for a personal reason. My mother, when I was a small boy, was very active with the stocking, and so it's just wonderful. The proclamation is for the Brattleboro Reformer Christmas stocking. Whereas the Brattleboro Reformer Christmas stocking began in 1937, and whereas the Brattleboro Reformer Christmas stocking has been aiding needy children continuously for 76 years, and whereas the town of Brattleboro recognizes that in 2012 there are over 1,000 children each year in need of winter outerwear, and whereas Brattleboro, Vermont recognizes that the Reformer Christmas stocking provides these children with the needed clothing, and whereas Brattleboro, Vermont recognizes that people in all walks of life are positively serving on the Reformer Stocking Committee to care for the well-being of our community, and whereas the Brattleboro Reformer sponsors the Christmas stocking each year, allowing the public to donate to this cause. Now, therefore, the Brattleboro Selectboard does hereby proclaim the month of December 2012 as the Brattleboro Reformer Christmas Stocking Month.
Very good, and I'll accept a motion to accept the proclamation.
Well, I'll move it.
There you go. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, 4-0. And if you want to sign that, I'd like to just say a couple words. I think it's absolutely wonderful what this organization does. I feel blessed as a citizen of this community to have an organization. I see this firsthand as actually I'm one of the mules. I don't get to sit on the board or do any of the glamour work, but I see the people that they reach, the hard work that goes into this program, 12 months a year. They've just finished distribution, and I've seen recipients and their faces light up, and it's really amazing. It's heartwarming, and to be from a community that values taking care of those less fortunate, and even when you have recipients of this program coming back, donating their time, and donating precious money that they have, even makes it all the more special. So I'm really proud to be a part of this community. I'm proud to be able to sign this proclamation, and I can't thank the board, your board, enough, and the reformer for this continued great service, not only for Brattleboro, but the surrounding community. So I applaud you all. So if we can have Dora and David sign this. I don't know, I see Pat Smith here, and Betty's here, and is Sue Greenbaum here? No? Sue's not here? Well, Pat, we can have you come up, and Pat is one of the older board members. How many years, Pat?
No, she's one of the younger board members. That's
Not older, that's right. You're younger than I am. So, thank you very much, and much appreciated. We hope this continues forever and ever. And all the volunteers that work with the board members that come and do all the unpackings, it's quite an operation. And Betty, thank you for your leadership in keeping the group held together, and your board. So it's much appreciated. And again, that's what makes Brattleboro the unique town that it is. So, anyone else for public participation? Tim.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, for those of you who don't know me, and hopefully I'm doing my job so that members very few, Tim Johnson from WTSA, and of course I'm involved with Project Feed the Thousands, which kicked off this past year. Just to let you know, the process is alive and well with co-chairs Kelly Corbeil and Jeff Moose, and the apparatus. Oh, it's gone on.
Sorry.
Ah, okay. Well, I'll repeat everything I said, but just to let you know, Project Feed the Thousands is alive and well with new co-chairs Kelly Corbeil and Jeff Morse, and Lucy Fortier is doing a whale of a job at the Brattleboro area drop-in center. But unfortunately, the numbers continue to go up, and we need your help. I'm sorry to say we're doing this again this year, but we need your help more than ever. And just in advance, thank you to the town employees who I know are doing their own food drive. You have a very caring group of people who work for you as a select board and for everyone as the town. So thank you in advance, and please help out Project Feed the Thousands while you can. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. And I would just say, if you don't think that this community is unique between the two groups, you're looking at almost $300,000 of donated money and product to the needy in our community. I don't know of any community that's doing that of our size. So that's pretty special. So thank you to both organizations. Yes.
Donna Simons from A Candle in the Night, Building a Better Brattleboro, and I just want to thank Dick DeGray for coming to the Building a Better Brattleboro board meeting last week. It was wonderful. It made all of us on the board feel good, and it really, I think, made us feel like we have a great commitment to each other to work together. So just want to publicly thank you for taking the time to come to the board meetings. I know you're busy and you do a lot, so from all of us, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll accept the motion to go into Water and Sewer Commissioners.
I move to convene as Water and Sewer Commissioners.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 4-0.
This evening, the board, in the agenda, you'll notice that usually we have the monthly report as one item, and then the quarterly financials is another. I've put them together because they're, particularly as we get closer to the end of the whole project, they become more and more integrated. And so Gene Forbes with Hoyle Tanner and Associates is going to go over the report, and then we will go over some of the finances as well. So to give the board, to make sure that everyone is on the same page with where we're at in the project, both in terms of work being done as well as the budget.
You're up, Gene.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here again. You have my report, but just to go over some of the highlights and issues that I'd like to bring to your attention. The project is very active still. There's a lot going on. In addition to the things that are listed here, some of the points I'd like to note is that the Headworks building, the new Headworks facility, has been put into operation last month and is now screening and removing grid and pumping all the wastewater into the new clarifiers that start the treatment process. Last week, final paving was put down. Loaming and seeding has been taking place. Most of the area is all seeded, although we're not expecting a lot of growth this late in the year, but it is all down at this point. The contractor continues to work diligently towards the remaining process areas that need to be done. Next week, we expect them to be starting the new dewatering equipment. Also, the week after that, they should be again utilizing the new sludge digestion equipment. So we see a lot of activity, a lot of things coming online, and a lot of progress. There have been some changes that I'd like to bring to your attention today and ask for your approval. There are 4 that I'll go over. The first one includes the relocation of domestic water line to the railroad. This is something that's been identified very early on in the project. There's a railroad service line that comes off the north end of the project that needed to be replaced. So this work reconnects that water line. Second issue was a credit. I should mention that additional work is for a total of $6,112.
Why is that expense to the town rather than the railroad?
That's a water service line from the town system that we replaced as part of the project. The second item is a credit for $9,457. In the digester building, we identified some of the piping that we had shown on the contract documents as being insulated, and we determined that it did not need to be, so we looked for a credit and negotiated a $9,457 credit to delete that insulation. The third item at the thermophilic digester. This item is a little complex to explain, but basically in a general sense, we're providing for flexibility that allows us to, what we're doing here is putting in some initial piping, some valves and tees to provide the town with an easy way in the future, if it becomes necessary, to divert some of the methane gas that's produced off of the digester directly to the flare that is operating now. You've probably seen over the years the fact that you've just burned off the methane gas. We'll still have a flare there, and that's always been in the design, but what we are trying to provide provisions for is the gas that comes off of the thermophilic digester has a potential to be much more contaminated than the other gas coming off the digesters, the mesophilic digesters. I don't mean to be too complicated with this, but in essence, you've got a gas conditioning system that cleans that gas before burning it, and it's very likely in the future you may want to divert gas. So rather than just put this piping in now, we're putting in provisions for that future connection without having to shut things down and rebuild it here. This, we're looking at several valves and some T's, and it's a change of $8,680 that we're recommending. This also has with it a requested, and we recommend the approval of 3 additional contract days, as this work was on the critical path relative to getting the digester up and running. And the 4th item is a gas suction line from the thermophilic digester. This line is a increase that provides for, I'm sorry, I'm getting these a little bit confused. The gas suction line from the thermophilic and the digester building needed to be elevated in order to match the existing condition as it entered the building. So this provided some insulation and protection for that line as it crossed the parking lot. And this represents a $5,478 change to protect that piping. And this also, again, associated with the piping for that digester, requires an extra 2 calendar days. So these are the 4 items that exceed the authorization for Steve to approve changes. And so we respectfully look for your approval to those changes today. Shall I continue with other things? All right. I should also report on the changes that Steve has authorized and have been undertaken. These are changes that are less than $5,000 in value. The first one is added grout at a glazed block in the digester building. Here we're turning some of the existing space into different uses. Here we have one of the building areas where we're putting new tile and having office space needed to build out the toe plate of the grout of the tile because the existing condition in that room had a curved end on a flashing on the bottom. So in order to flush that out, they required more work to make that fit. Second one is some safety wiring, interlock wiring. This was associated with the septic pumps, I believe, in the headworks to avoid operating with 2 pumps at the same time. The third one, the chlorine contact tank scum removal piping. We modified this to reduce some of the operator problems in terms of his managing his scum collection at the chlorine contact tank. This was representing a $3,117 increase. This also included 1 contract day as it impacted the contractor's schedule. One of the things that we provided as a credit of $3,296 was deletion of some polyethylene wrap that we had specified for some of the ductile iron piping buried on the site. As the project continued, we felt that this was not necessary because of the lack of history of any aggressive soils in the area. So we deleted that and recommended this change to Steve, and he approved that. The concrete extensions at the Nichii siding, this associated with the outside finishing of the control building, and provided for just a presentable fit as that detail was developed around windows. The last item, converting the waste primary sludge pump check valves. This was a $3,911 increase and 1 additional contract day. This provided for a check valve that was not specified or shown on the contract drawings, and we wanted to eliminate the potential for backflow from the tank where this is discharging to the into the Department's verifiers. So these authorized changes, these 6 changes add up to $13,033 and 2 additional days. Those are the changes that we have today. I want to talk a little bit about the project schedule. PC Construction informed us recently at the last monthly meeting that they were projecting about a little over a month delay in their completion of the project. This seems to be moving as we develop every meeting. Currently, just today we received another schedule that is now projecting they're finished out quite a bit further. They're experiencing some difficulties with their digestion process, piping and wiring. There's also concern that they've expressed about the development of the biology in the thermophilic area of the digestion process. This is the part of the process that enhances your treatment to a Class A sludge. The final date we don't know yet. We certainly are doing what we can to try to keep that as minimal as possible. It kind of underscores a couple things. One is that they continue to be aggressive in every change and conversation we have about a change, recognizing the impact on their schedule and looking for extra time to deal with that. And the second thing I want to bring to your attention is the contract documents do require do include a provision for up to $1,500 a day in liquidated damages for their delay. So what that means is it's not a penalty, it's a damage-related factor, so that it makes them responsible for whatever damages are related to their delay in completing the job. Those damages typically include things like added engineering costs, increased cost of disposal, more energy costs associated perhaps with the failure to use the cogeneration equipment. Those kind of damages we'll be looking at assessing against the delay as that becomes more clear what that delay could be. The project photos, I think, are worth noting. I'd like to just get to those in a minute, though. But before that, you see a list I want to just draw your attention to. We've had this list month after month. It's been here since the beginning of our reporting. But I just want to stress that this list has been for the wastewater project, and it's a tracking of any potential changes. And right now, we're still in very good shape change-wise. We are, the summary at the end of this year, the contingency overview, indicates as we started the project, we generally target a 5% overall project contingencies. To date, we have actually credited more than we have increased, and the remaining contingency right now, actually it's just a little bit less than we started with. It's down to $1,120,428. So this month with these approvals will be the first month that we've actually had a net negative impact on the contingency. Through this list, you'll see there's still a number of issues that are under discussion, not being recommended, or some that may at some point be still debatable. We have, at the end of the job, an expectation that we'll resolve all these, but there certainly are, I think, a relatively small number. It's a full page, but most of these are resolved and have been dealt with. Getting back to the pictures, you'll see these photographs taken back on the 12th of November. And the very last page kind of brings me to the next item. I want to talk a little bit about the pump stations. I want to remind you that the wastewater project has been more than the wastewater treatment plant. We have the Riverside Pump Station, which has been part of the wastewater plant contract. So PC Construction is undertaking this work. And right now you can see the photographs from last week as they were excavating for the replacement of this station. That part's going very well. They reached down into this hole over 25 feet and have today set the bases for that new station. So a milestone with that. The other pump station I want to mention, two other pump stations. One is Spring Tree. Spring Tree Pump Station. The town has recently awarded the contract for that work to Sherborne Construction. There has been a notice to proceed issued, and we have had our pre-construction conference. The contractor has been starting to line up some of his work activities. One of the first things that will be done any day now will be relocation of the propane tank and excavation of the new propane tank in that property. But that project will be taking place through the winter and into the spring. Finally, Black Mountain Pump Station is another, that is the one major project component that has not been awarded yet. And just to give you an update on that, there had been some discussion for several months now about the potential of elimination of that station. Rather than upgrading the station, it appeared feasible that a new gravity line could be drilled underneath Route 91 to connect with the existing gravity system and thereby eliminating all future operating costs associated with the pump station. This concept has been developed further. Last week there were some soil borings done in the center of Route 91 in between the median area and on both sides. And those soil borings are very promising. We're waiting for the official final results, but our observations indicate that the soils there have been identified in the lens where we want to drill some horizontal directional drilling, some good soft silts and sands. So we're optimistic. We'll be refining the pricing, an estimate for that, so that you can be making a decision in the near future about the potential to eliminate that station or to proceed with the upgrade as originally planned. Again, I just want to remind you that these stations had always been part of the original bond authorization, and I think at that point maybe it'd be a good point to go over some of the financials. Unless there are any questions on my part of the presentation.
Barb, John?
What the board had in their packet, in addition to what John has been putting in as the quarterly funding sources and uses, I had requested from John and then as well as from Hoyle Tanner a better outline for the board about where we actually are with the entire project, which means all the work that's being done down at the facility area, but as well, and in addition, the two pump stations. Because I think it was a couple months ago where we got the approval for the Spring Tree, 2 months ago, and when that came in, I was not at that meeting, but I know it was over the estimated cost, and so I've been wanting to figure out where we're at with the entire budget. This, what you have on the sheet that's dated in the upper right-hand corner, 11/14/2012, and on the left it says Brattleboro Wastewater Treatment Facility Upgrade Project Cost Summary. Went over this with Gene. This does tell a story, however, talking with Gene and John today, my concern was it's not as easy for people to kind of clearly see where we're at. So with that today, they developed a different sheet so that you can kind of see more clearly where you're at. I'm going to start this by going back in time. The project was authorized at $32.8 million for bond. We did not, if the board will remember, initially the idea would be that we would be seeking that funding through the State Revolving Loan Fund. The State Revolving Loan Fund then put a $4 million annual cap on that each year. And so that capped us basically to a 12 million. We then had the opportunity to apply for recovery zone funding that was kind of available that 1 year. It's at a higher interest rate than the state revolving loan fund, but it was at a lower interest rate than conventional bonds. It also, however, it impacted our repayment schedule, our rate schedule, because it required payments immediately. At the time of that, it was the recommendation of John Leisenring that we not borrow that full remaining amount that would be, so we knew we'd be able to get about 12 million from the state revolving loan fund, but we decided not to borrow that full amount, but the difference between the 32,800 and the 12 million, 32,800,000 and the 800,000 and the 12 million. Part of the reasoning for that was you are authorized on the project to 32.8. So if we were able to get to, if we were in the project and we needed that money, okay, if we needed that money, because originally the kind of the contingency for the entire project was estimated at about 1.5 something, about 1.5, I guess. If we didn't need that full amount, you can't prepay on a bond, so you'd be paying that out. The other thing is, if you had the opportunity to apply for some type of bond or some type of grant, we would have been capped at the 32.8 on the project, and we wouldn't have been able to take advantage of either additional grant funding or additional lower interest rates. Say they changed, because at that point we were talking with legislators about changing their rule with regard to the cap, the $4 million cap. So we did not borrow that full amount. So what we've been watching, the majority of the project is the work that's going on down at the plant, which is the RBCs and the wastewater treatment facility. That accounts for approximately 27 million just in the construction. Okay, and we've been watching the contingency on that, and as it was just reported, we've been doing well with that. If you look at the sheet that you have in front of you, what you see is the project funding authorization of the 32.8 million, and then under here you have engineers' estimates, and then low bid. So what you can, and then the delta between those two. So you can see we were 467,000 low in the good on the facility. We were 291,000 in the good with the RBCs. And then, as you recall, when Springtree was approved, that bid was approved. That came in higher than was estimated by about 196,000. Okay, so thus far, we're kind of in the good on our bids. That showed us in the good of about 562,500. If you go down to that next little box, you'll see that the engineers' estimates stay the same. We then have current estimates. You'll notice that for the wastewater treatment facility, that increased some. It's because of change orders that have occurred. So it's the original bid was $22,500,500. We're now at $22,580,097. So about 80,000 more. The potential change. We sat down with Gene today and said, realistically, give me a worst case scenario of what project changes could happen, what adders or deletions could occur within these last 4 months of construction, 3 months, 4 months, depending on when the end date is. This 225,000 is what is a guesstimate of kind of a worst case scenario. So you'll see if you take the difference between the engineer's estimate, the current estimate, and any potential changes of the 225, we still are in the good on that project of about 163,000. The RBC project, that project's done, and we were 264, almost 265,000 in the good. The Spring Tree, you have the work really hasn't started on that. All of the engineering is done, but we do have it's about a 5% contingency there of so it's about $37,000. So if that project, if comes in within that, that comes in kind of over what we had anticipated or estimated. The Black Mountain, we have that was estimated at 500,000. We have it as a current estimate of 500,000 just because it hasn't gone to bid yet. And it hasn't gone to bid because we're not actually sure what we're going to do. If we move forward, if the board, and this is the decision, this is the upcoming decision for the board. I'll let you know kind of when decision points are coming. Upcoming decision for the board is going to be, once we find out through the soil borings and that work, whether a gravity feed system is possible, we will then be able to, we will get an estimate on what that would cost. The gravity fed, construction of the gravity fed system is higher than reconstruction of the pump station. Okay? However, what you need to look at is future operating costs and capital costs. Basically, what you would have are pipes in the ground, and as opposed to a pump station that has mechanical operations, and that would need to be updated again in 20 years. Okay. I asked Jean to give me what's a worst case scenario of try to give me a worst case scenario of the gravity fed. Worst case would be $1 million. I would believe, because of where we had the original estimate for Spring Tree and where our original estimate for Black Mountain is and where we ended up on Spring Tree, that we can anticipate that original estimate's going to be low also. So I'm going to guess that you're not going to be comparing a $500,000 project of replacing the pump station with a $1 million project of the gravity fed. I'm going to guess that that's probably going to end up being a little bit more. So anyway, just taking the worst case scenario, we're about 500, kind of over what we had originally estimated. We would also then have to add in that engineering is engineering for the $1 million gravity fed. Okay? So potential, kind of worst case potential changes as we move forward has an additional $837,000. Okay? We have currently available funding, and that is bond, both through the State Revolving Loan Fund, the Recovery Zone, the Clean Energy Development Fund, and the ERA funding. We currently have cash available or funding available in the amount of $31,425,862. If the worst case scenario occurs for everything, we would have current estimates with changes so that what we would have is that 31 under, so you see on that middle panel where it has engineer's estimate, current estimates. If you add current estimates and potential changes, that comes to $32,500,000 there. So we're about $1.1 million shy in funding for that,
Under the worst-case scenario.
under the worst-case scenario. So that is, so you will note that that 32.5 is still under the actual original project funding authorization and the amount that we went to town meeting by about 300,000. And so the next question then that is going to come before the board, once a decision is made on Black Mountain, is how are we going to pay for it? Because that's essentially the Black Mountain project. We have, they have started discussions with Winslow Ledoux from Department of Environmental Conservation with regard to if we change the scope of that pump station upgrade, will it still be seen as coming in under the grant or the bonding authority that town meeting gave us? Okay, would they add, even if we change the scope from the pump station to a gravity system, is that too much of a change for them to accept as part of that original? And would we have to go back and ask for a separate authorization for it? Or would it just be part of the original? If it's part of the original, and even if we have to go back and ask for special, I guess even if we'd have to ask for special authorization again from town meeting, we would be able to borrow that money through the state revolving loan fund because in the next year, in 2013, we won't have borrowed, it was not our plan to take any money from the state revolving loan fund. So in essence, John Leisenring's thinking was correct in that by not borrowing that 1.4 million 3 years ago, we are able to take, we have missed, we'll be able to take advantage of a lower interest rate project or bonding source, loan source, that also, as you recall, defers payments for the first 2 years after construction. So that's where we're at. The other thing I just wanted to kind of be somewhat talk about is not all borrowing is dollar for dollar. The state revolving loan fund has forgiveness in it. The first year we did it, it was a 20% forgiveness. Then the second year was 15, the third year was 10. We never know what forgiveness may be or if there'll be any. So even though we have that amount of a bond, that's not actually, and that repayment, that lower repayment is calculated in the repayment schedule. So that's kind of where we're at. So next decision making, and the next big kind of decisions we have to do with, one, what are we going to do with Black Mountain? We have information that still needs to be gathered. And two, then how would we finance it? There is one other option for doing that, and that's to use, we currently, as the board's aware, we have been developing a fund balance. Okay, we currently have a couple of $1 million available that we have in place to pay for the debt down over time. It would be a possibility, and again, we would need to, the board would want to think about this, and we would want to do several different projections on what would happen if we use the cash now to pay for that and would have to look at how that scenario would work out.
We have to reconsider the ordinance when we're considering the water and sewer
I believe
budget
it's
this
up
year.
anyway, yeah.
Because we need to consider for the next 3 or
Right.
5 years what the rates are going to be, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So we would be happy to take any questions on this.
The pro forma was based on the whole amount, the 32.8.
I do not believe it was. I believe that it was based on the 31, the 31.3, 31.4. And I believe that because it was, we wouldn't have known where to show the repayment. Now, it was, however, the pro forma, so it does not have that 1 million in there in that rate setting tool. But what it also does not have is the forgiveness of the state revolving loans. And those add up to almost $1 million, I believe. Is that not correct?
It's about 2 million, because I'll
About
remind
2
you, there
million.
was ERA funding that provided $1 million.
Now, that
forgiveness
forgiveness
as well.
is over time because it's in the payback schedule.
Right.
But again, that's another thing that we need to look at and figure out, how does one offset the other?
So Barb, clarifying, we don't see in this project financing summary any mention of the forgiveness. Is that right?
Correct.
So we're essentially being cut some financial slack here in this that we're not seeing here. Is that correct? Is that right?
This doesn't look at repayment.
Okay.
This isn't looking at repayment, so it's almost, this is the opposite. This is looking at your revenue and your expenditures. It's not looking at your repayment. It's not looking at our debt service and how that
Okay.
comes in.
Yeah, if I could add
got
to, it's important because your bond authorization was required to cover that amount that the state is forgiving.
Got it.
So when you compare it to your authorization, it's important to know you don't exceed what you're authorized to bond for.
Got
Right, and we have taken the conservative view that any revenue utilized for this, that we get for this project, goes towards that ceiling of the 32.8, whether we get a grant. We also don't take into, because we don't know, we know we're going to be getting some money back from a couple other sources, like smaller amounts, like from Efficiency Vermont. We know we're going to be getting some amount of money, but we don't take that into consideration because really, in the scheme of things, from this view, kind of the 30,000 feet, it doesn't matter. What we're trying to get is, we've got some decisions to make in the relatively near future, and
Clarify for me, Bobby. Barb talked about going back to town meeting. We're authorized to go up to 32.8. Why, even though we're not going to exceed that number, why would we have to go back for authorization?
only because the State Department of Environmental, or the person who's doing this, giving the state revolving loan funding out, would say, no, this project has been substantially changed, and so you need to get this on its own. It's kind of like a bait. They want to make sure there's no bait and switch going on.
Right. And that's a little bit uncertain even now. I think
Right.
nobody's really answered that question. But fundamentally, we went to the public when we looked for authorization and explained that we needed money to upgrade the pump station, which can be viewed as different than replacing the pump station with a battery line.
Can we include an item that would provisionally allow us to use the bond authorization for this alternative purpose on the warning for the town meeting, so that we can use it for either purpose?
That may be appropriate. I'm not a
Might be,
lawyer.
we'd have to
but
ask
That would be a
Paul.
That would be a good way to do that if we
Right.
have to.
Right, I think we could do that.
So let's remember that for the warning as we develop it.
So then, if I may, Barb, the forgiveness then is built into the projections of revenue and expense down the road instead? Is that the story?
Would be,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, so we already are budgeting with regard
No.
to that
No,
No.
in
no.
the future for the, no?
No.
For when we're calculating rates?
I don't believe so.
No.
There's other
Okay.
things that are left out of that calculation as well, because there was a projection of additional revenue, if I recall correctly, from being able to well, there was additional revenue from one of the new businesses in town that was left out
Right, we
of
left
our
that out.
calculation.
That's right.
So there may
Yes.
be better news with
Yes.
respect to
Okay.
Well, we-
the
Okay.
rate tool.
There's
in more
zero,
than one area.
zero growth projection in the pro
Correct.
forma.
Correct. We tried to do this as conservatively as possible.
So with the forgiveness, there's, the surplus is actually in much better shape. But the downside of that, because the revolving loan fund was capped, we're paying back, we're already paying back on one of the loans that we have
Yes, we are.
had to take out to fill that gap, so.
We will have that one paid off first, is how we like to think about it.
There you go.
But that repayment schedule and that accelerated repayment schedule is built into the
Yes.
tool already.
That
That's
is
right.
in there.
That's
yes.
right. Yeah.
Yes.
That's,
Thank you very much.
Dora's got a question.
Dora,
Well, going back to the changes, following David's question, and I think I know the answer to why the railroad isn't paying for this, having sat through all those Union Station meetings. But it seemed that it was always part of the project, and I'm wondering why it wasn't in the budget. The way you were describing it was that this was this was expected. So I was just wondering
The railroad.
the water to the railroad, the water connection.
To be.
It was determined early that it would be needed, but it wasn't going to be able to be really scoped out and managed until they got up to that end of the site. But it had been understood fairly early on that that line needed to be replaced.
So it wasn't
It was not-
it wasn't
but it was
included
not
because they
included.
didn't have a good estimate for it.
Right.
Okay, that's what I was looking for.
I move to approve and ratify the proposed project changes as presented, adding $23,846 and 7 contract days to the project, and to authorize the town manager to sign the corresponding change order.
I think that's 23,846, not 23 million.
Yeah, I hope you
Did I
take that
say
as a friendly
23 million?
amendment.
23,846, sorry.
I'm like, where did that come from?
Scared me.
23,846.
There you go.
That table wasn't going to tell you.
Discussion. I did talk to you briefly before the meeting started. I am concerned about the extension
Yes.
of the project. I don't think I'll be around for the ribbon cutting ceremony, but I am very concerned about that, given the fact that we were looking at probably finishing up early this month.
Well, I share your concern, Dick, and you know, I think the best response I can give you is that we're not sacrificing quality as we move through. We're making sure that equipment is checked out and tested properly and approved before put into service. You know, it's still coming along very well. They're doing good quality work. We're being very thorough in making sure that they do before things are turned on. We don't want to sacrifice quality just to meet a date. But we are keeping the pressure on them to keep that date. We're getting updates every month at our monthly meeting, and we continue to be sure that we are communicating as rapidly on any concerns or questions that they may come up with. So we will certainly take their concern to heart and do what we can.
Any other questions?
Who's paying the damages? The construction company is paying the liquidated damages?
They're responsible for liquidated damages, and I just want to stress the difference between liquidated damages and a penalty. You don't just rack in $1,500 a day. It's damages up to $1,500 a day. So we'll be looking at what damages there have been, and like I said, they generally relate to performance of the plant, engineering and time out there, disposal costs, energy costs, those kind of things.
So to reflect back to you, what I understand is that that would be compensating us for the extra costs that we incur because of their delay?
Exactly.
Okay.
That's our intent.
Yeah.
And I will caution, of course, those are the sorts of things you're arm wrestling with at the end, and there's always a debate, and it hopefully will resolve amicably, but we'll be looking to you for approval to whatever solutions are ultimately resolved or recommended.
Thanks.
All those in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, 4-0. Thank you. Thank you, Gene. I will accept the motion to adjourn as Water and Sewer Commissioners.
I'll move to adjourn.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, 4-0. New business.
Monthly financial reports for the period ending October 31st. John?
Thanks, Barb. Good evening, everyone. The October financial report is included in your packet. We're 4 months into the fiscal year, so we're a third of the way through the fiscal year as of the end of October. So we would expect expenditures to be right around 33.3% of our budget. And actually, in the general fund, they're 32.2%, a little lower. And if we adjust a couple of one-time payments that are included in the budget through October, one is a transfer to the capital fund, which is a one-time annual thing we do, and another is a semi-annual insurance payment. If we adjust that on a pro rata basis, the expenditures would actually be about 29.6% of the annual budget. So the general fund seems to be tracking very well, and no surprises to date. And right now, we'd be looking at coming in on or a little bit under budget than the general fund. Our utilities fund, our expenditures are 26.9%, and our parking fund expenditures are 26.3%. So again, all three of our major funds are doing very well compared to the budget at this point in time. So all of the detail for each of those funds is included in the packet. If you have any specific questions on any of the line items, I'd be glad to try to answer those for you. If not, we can move on to some of the other financial aspects that I'd like to touch on. So the next thing that I'd like to talk a little bit about is the loan fund. And that's included after the detailed financials in your packet. And you can see at the very bottom of that page, our current loan balance is a little over $4 million. $4,016,501. The bulk of that is VCDP funding, which is most of those loans are deferred. So we have $2.3 million in deferred VCDP loans, and we have another $830,000 of active VCDP loans. So the bulk of our loan portfolio is really made up of our VCDP loans. All of our loans are current, with the exception of one, which is an individual who passed away. And I know Bob has been working on this. I don't believe the state has yet been established, but that is the only loan that right now is behind. And we are aware of it, and we are protected with that loan. So
We are protected.
yeah, we have a lien on property,
Thank you.
other things that, yeah. So the next report shows the what we have available to loan from the VCDP funds that we've collected in the past, so our program income. And at the bottom of that page, you can see that the total program income that we have available to loan as of the end of October is $529,479. So we have a fairly substantial amount of money that we can loan out for various purposes. Okay? And finally, we have the long sheets, which are the all of our grants, and this go on for quite a few pages. And at this point in time, we have 40 grants that are active. We've closed 9 grants so far this year that were active at the beginning of the year. And we have 13 new grants that are in the application process. So we have a very active, grant administration process here. So that's kind of the financial recap for the month of October. And as I said, I'd be glad to try to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions by the board? Thank you, John.
Hated those numbers.
Yeah. I like those.
Okay. Next, the board is asked to accept and appropriate a hazard mitigation grant through the state Vermont Emergency Management Division. And the hazard mitigation grant program is essentially a FEMA program that is administered locally by the state of Vermont through the emergency management. You have what we are looking at here is potential buyout of the property at 805 Western Avenue. This came before the board several months back to move forward. There were several hazard mitigation grant projects that came before the board. At this point, I think I will turn it over to Patrick. He's been working with this particular project and with the hazard mitigation grant program in general.
Thank you, Barb. So as some of you may recall, there were a few other hazard mitigation grants that the town was awarded. A couple of them were for drainage projects out in Ames Hill and Barrows Road. The town actually applied for a variety of different hazard mitigation projects, including other acquisitions which have since chosen to withdraw their application. That was out at Tri-Park, for example. So the property we're discussing here is the only hazard mitigation acquisition before the town. So just a couple of highlights that I'd like to bring to everybody's attention. As you recall, back in August of 2011, Tropical Storm Irene came in and provided severe damage to the property at 805 Western Avenue. Later in 2012, in February, the town submitted a proposal for a buyout of 805 Western Avenue. That buyout project is designed to fund the pre-event market value of the home to the property owner, the cost for deconstruction and demolition of the property, and the cost to turn that property back into a green space. And part of the condition of the project is that the property, that permanent development restrictions be filed in the Land Records Office such that the property is no longer a site for future development. It is clear to me from the work that I've done with the property owner that they will benefit significantly from the finances of the way this project would work. And lastly, I think it is important for us to recognize that the program is called hazard mitigation, and that these funds are provided only to communities that have suffered a presidentially declared natural disaster, and that the funds are intended to ensure that damage of this sort never takes place again at that location. There are two other things I'd like to bring to your attention. One is we received a letter today, actually it was a fax, from Ray Doherty of the Hazard Mitigation Division of Vermont Emergency Management, indicating their strong support for the application. And I would also like to make the board aware that the property owners are here this evening. We have Valerie Walden and Tony Odrzejewski. I hope I pronounced that properly. And I think, I'm not sure how you wish to proceed. I'm not sure if you guys would like to maybe take a minute and speak to the board and sort of give them a little background in terms of how this buyout would affect you and your family.
Actually,
I'm going to ask you to either come up to the table or come up to the microphone.
brought with me, we are the owners on the title, but we also share title ownership with my husband's parents because they procured the mortgage in our name for this property about 9 years ago. And they couldn't be here, they live in Long Island, so they have sent a letter that they wanted us to read to you guys, and it includes their request. And then I'd like to just take a few minutes and talk about where we're at and leave it at that, see what you guys want to do. So to begin, it says Brattleboro Town Selectboard, Town Managers. My wife, this is from Michael and Virginia Odzikowski. My wife, Virginia Odzikowski, myself, Michael Odzikowski, parents of Anthony Odzikowski, entitled as 50% owners as husband and wife, with Anthony and Valerie as husband and wife, to said property at 805 Western Avenue in the town of Brattleboro, Vermont. My wife and I both agree that the home at 805 Western Avenue was always the sole property of my son Anthony and Odzikowski and Valerie Walden. It was always, in fact, from time of purchase, their primary home. We acquired the mortgage in mine and my wife's name because they did not have the credit to get a home loan approval. We helped our son, his wife, and their family with this in lieu of Anthony going to college, as we had paid for our children's education. However, Anthony was looking into potential electrician apprenticeship programs, one where his education would be part of his work. We agreed that we would help them acquire the mortgage and help them out for a while until Anthony finished school, because at that time they were all residing in subsidized housing on Clark Street. We paid the down payment for the home and secured the mortgage. Anthony and Valerie were both very nervous about taking on such a big jump in expenses. At the time, they were paying $280 plus utilities for their very small two-bedroom apartment. The new mortgage was to be $1,250 per month plus utilities for a five-bedroom house. My son Anthony worked at Burger King at the time, making $8.75 per hour, and Valerie worked for H&R Block at $11 per hour. We reassured them that we would help them if things got to be too much and encouraged them to take this opportunity to get safe and adequate housing for their family. We would like to emphasize they were never renters, but the sole owners and occupants at 805 Western Avenue. We had a mock rental agreement because the bank required it due to our debt-to-income ratio at the time of our initial application for loan approval. Anthony and Valerie managed to pay their mortgage for the first 3 years and in addition paid for extensive repairs and improvements to their home. It was these very repairs and improvements that increased the value of their home substantially in such a short period of time. It was clear they were deeply connected and invested in their home for themselves and their family. Shortly after we had refinanced in the fall of 2007 with Quicken Loans in an attempt to avoid a variable interest rate clause in the mortgage with Brattleboro Savings and Loans, the mortgage was quickly sold to Countrywide. This happened so quickly that we were unable to address why Valerie and Anthony's names were not added to the title as had been agreed upon with Quicken's Loans. Anthony and Valerie paid the mortgage for their home regularly until issues with the mortgage being bought by Countrywide and then Bank of America purchasing Countrywide began a series of escalating issues. After the refinance and as the loan passed hands from bank to bank, the original terms of the mortgage were altered by the new banks. This in turn caused drastic increases in the monthly mortgage amount, which was a supposed fixed-rate mortgage. Things went from bad to worse when, in attempting to gain insight as to what was going on with the mortgage, Anthony had lost his job in early 2008, just a few months shy of finishing his electrician journeyman's license 4 years from start. Over the next few years, the requested mortgage payment amounts continued to skyrocket, first from $1,380 to $1,480 and upwards to $1,580. Anthony finished his electrician's program and successfully tested for his journeyman and received his license in 2009. They tried to keep making payments to the never-ending and always increasing mortgage payment demand, now with embedded late fees and lender-imposed flood insurance. When they attempted to make some use of the homeowner retention services that the government had available, the banks refused to talk with them or consider them owners of their house, or consider their financial circumstances, as Quicken Loan had not added their names as agreed upon. They continue to struggle to pay current utility bills, car payments, rising gas costs, and food prices, and despite their efforts, they began drowning in escalating costs with no one in sight. We as parents tried to help them as much as we could, but had come upon hard financial times ourselves, and the late payments to the mortgage began to adversely affect our credit. This made it all the more impossible to help as we were forced to look into bankruptcy due to rising debt in our name. We were unable to get straight answers from the bank as to what was causing this kind of monthly mortgage payment increase and to why the terms of our fixed-rate mortgage had changed. To date, we have never even received a copy of the actual mortgage documentation from when the loan was sold, and to this date, we still have no idea where the escrow account is actually held or have an escrow account number. All of our requests for paperwork and clarification have been ignored, and in January of 2012, after we once again filed a request for an escrow review, wanted to know where in fact the escrow was held, Bank of America responded by filing for foreclosure on our children's homes. In 2010, the monthly mortgage amount went up to $1,680 per month on what was to have been a total original loan amount of $164,000. Anthony and Valerie said they could no longer make payments until Bank of America provided us with paperwork that showed where the money was going, what the terms of the loan were, and how a fixed-rate mortgage changed constantly. At $1,600 per month, they would have to be paying a mortgage similar to someone who held a $300,000 home loan in their name. Their total household income in 2010 was $41,000 for their 6-person family. Compounding matters further, we acknowledge that due to errors the tax preparer made, our tax preparer made, that we are still to date trying to rectify. Anthony and Valerie were informed by a representative of the Vermont State Tax Information Line they were not able to file for homestead declaration. Our children were told they were required to file as renters through the Renters Rebate Program. I was told to file a landlord certificate as my accountant had incorrectly utilized a deductions form that made the property appear as an investment property. When Anthony and Valerie contacted the State Taxpayer Information Line in 2006, asking for information on how to file, their names did not appear on the grand list as owners due to the way the taxes were filed, and resulted in them being told they were not able to utilize the homestead declaration credit and were seen as renters in their home, even though they themselves paid all the property taxes on the home. This was a terrible mistake that left them paying an average of $4,500 per year in property taxes since 2005, when their gross income averaged between $32,000 and $38,000 for a family of 6 with 3 disabled children over the majority of the years they lived there. The town of Brattleboro has greatly benefited from this error. If Anthony and Valerie had received the homestead declaration they were entitled to, they probably would have owed somewhere around $300 per year in property taxes. We have tried to see if there was anything we could do to recoup some of these overcharges in the property taxes, but have been informed by the Vermont State Department we cannot file for the credit retroactively despite the error. This means there is no way for them to recoup the thousands of dollars that Brattleboro has benefited by. It is for all these reasons that we strongly urge and petition the Brattleboro Town Select Board to please vote in favor of the FEMA mitigation buyout of their flood-damaged home at 805 Western Avenue. Both Anthony and Valerie deserve and very much need some resolution to this ongoing nightmare. They have paid in money, work, and tears many times over any anticipated costs of their first home and cannot afford to repair the home as is. We cannot imagine, after all their efforts, starting over with children who have autism and require special housing conditions. The children require a certain level of quiet, patient, or limited proximity neighbors, and a generally reduced level of traffic and noise around the home, which makes moving into an apartment impossible. We hope that you will understand the gravity of this situation for them and consider what you would do if this was your family. No one should have to go through what they have gone through in the past year, hoping and waiting for FEMA's approval for this mitigation buyout. They have been surviving in an old 30-foot camper with conditions that are at best cramped, cold, and due to utility damage at the home, costing them a fortune in electricity. This is destroying their family and causing an unbearable amount of stress both on themselves and on their autistic children. They cannot continue to live this way and need very much to move forward with the mitigation buyout and find new housing so that their many years of hard work and efforts were not all lost. We request that should the town approve the FEMA mitigation buyout and upon final payoff of any bank mortgage and all remaining funds should be issued in a check directly to Anthony Odrzykowski and Valerie Walden only. We further waive any claims to the 50-50 split of any and all remaining funds so that they can secure appropriate housing for their family. This was never an investment property for us, but their primary family home. In closing, we would like the Select Board to know that we are currently having our attorney, Ms. Rebecca Bryce, I believe she's of Randolph, negotiate a substantial decrease in the payoff amount with the Bank of America. We are aware that time is of the essence in this matter. We feel that it is possible to have an agreement with Bank of America within the next 2 to 3 weeks. This, of course, would leave both Anthony and Valerie in a position to benefit from the buyout in a way that would make it possible for them to find new housing. The town has expressed concerns that they may not benefit enough or at all from the buyout given the current figures, but if given just a few more weeks, we believe our attorney will be able to reach an agreement with Bank of America that will substantially reduce buyout, possibly, or I won't get into the numbers, you can just read this, but if this payout was reduced and the insurance checks were then added to the deal, would further reduce the payoff, and this would leave a substantial amount of money to possibly purchase another home. We believe that the town can see how this will make the numbers more favorable for a buyout and clearly demonstrate the value of the buyout in Anthony and Valerie's favor, since we have waived and requested all remaining cash be paid to Anthony and Valerie Walden only. We urge you and hope you will kindly consider our request and vote in favor of the FEMA mitigation buyout. Thank you for your time in this matter. And they did have this notarized, and I made copies if you guys would like to see it. I just want to say that over the last year, as we went through this whole process, we were a family that had flood insurance. we determined that many of the issues with our mortgage was, in fact, we elected to have flood insurance even though it wasn't a requirement of our original mortgage with Quicken. And when the mortgage changed hands, that's when the issues with the escalating costs seemed to be an issue around a discrepancy between us having paid our flood insurance premiums directly to Allstate and the bank claiming that they're paying the primary premium directly to Allstate. Yet we've yet to, every time we have a court date set to try and get this ferreted out in front of a judge, they cancel or don't show up or reschedule. And being that they're Bank of America and we're nobody, we don't have the funds to fight Bank of America legally. So it's been a huge issue, and in addition to our primary policy, they then imposed lender-imposed flood insurance, which was through a company named Balboa Insurance, which later we found out was actually owned by Bank of America, and that the only people that could be paid out by that policy would be Bank of America. In addition, when the house was originally damaged in the flood, at that time, for all intents and purposes, we carried $280,000 in flood insurance, and we paid premiums on such until 2010 when we stopped making those payments, hoping that we would get our time in front of a judge to find out what was going on, mostly because there was just no way humanly possible to pay $1,680 a month on our mortgage. And we had no reason to believe it wouldn't stop escalating. When we became flooded and had to try and claim these insurance values, it was another whole ball game, and basically there was a discrepancy between Allstate, whose recommendations were we just replace some of the bricks around the house, that it would be just fine. That also included not covering utilities that were below basement. The house itself, I believe, was built in the primary portion of the house was built in 1936, and the FEMA requirements for what they call a substantial damage flood claim or grant proposal is based on two factors. One is they can use a cost-benefit analysis where they can have local municipality document substantial damage, which I believe the criteria is more than 50% of its current assessed value. Meaning that in order to come into compliance with the flood law, it would have to exceed or meet that. And to my best of my understanding, I believe there's some gray areas if it might be like at 55 or 60. I believe that the final determination was we were somewhere around 65 or more. The program itself, the hazard mitigation program, was developed. Really, our house fits it in a textbook way. It was built prior to 1950. Part of the discrepancy with whether or not we were required to carry flood insurance was because the property was grandfathered in a clause in a C zone, flood zone, even though in 2007, when the flood maps were updated to an AE, being that there had been no substantial flood or damage to the property and the property was built prior, we weren't required to pay the AE flood zone premiums, which would have changed the terms of our mortgage drastically. It could have been as much of an increase as up to $2,000 a year. I'm sorry.
Well, this is, I don't mean to cut you off, but there's a lot of information that you're giving us that isn't pertinent to this decision here. And as you can see, we do have one board member missing here this evening, and I first wanted to query the board if they would like to put this off until our December 4th meeting, or do you feel comfortable in moving forward here at this time? I do believe that this is the first time, at least in my tenure on the board, that we've had to deal with an issue like this. My personal preference would be that we have all 5 board members weigh in on this issue. And would like to hear from my fellow board members.
I was actually thinking that earlier.
I would like to discuss this with all 5 board members. It would also give me a chance to learn in some more detail about the property and the flood zone and the flood fringe that I just don't have, that I don't feel I have enough expertise on to make a good decision here. Because we're talking about taking a property out of the tax rolls, making it so that it can never be productive again, and weighing that against really quite a compelling narrative we've just heard. So I would be happy to entertain a motion to. I mean, I'd be happy to participate in a vote to table this to continue to the next meeting.
Can I say one other thing?
Well, I'm
That'd be really
prepared to proceed and to vote tonight. I heard this lengthy letter that was read to us that had nothing to do with the decision we have to make. If we're going to delay this, I want to make sure that we focus on the issues that are at hand with respect to this buyout. I don't think that the problems that they've had with the bank and the mortgage are relevant to this at all, and I don't really want to discuss them anymore because I don't think they're an issue. I'm ready to proceed, but if we want to delay, we can delay.
Well, I don't disagree with you. I think that the chair was extending a courtesy that, even though not really relevant to the issue, there is a courtesy that I feel that we should extend people who come before us. Having said that, I'll accept a motion to continue this until December 4th.
So moved.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? 3-1.
Earlier this evening at 5:30, the board interviewed Natalie Blake from one of the owners of Fulcrum Arts in their proposal for the archery building reuse. The board had 2 proposals. One was from Fulcrum Arts, the other was from the Arts Place. Yesterday, we received notification from the Arts Place that they were withdrawing their application, leaving the board with 1. Just as a reminder to the folks, the building we're talking about is on Depot Street. It's referred to as the archery building. It was actually one of the older train buildings in the area, and a request for proposals went out looking for redevelopment, reuse of that building, which the town now owns. And with that, the purpose would be then for the board to authorize entering into a contract with whomever, and as I said in the note, you can authorize entering into a contract agreement, you can seek additional things, or you can say you just want it to sit there. Although we did go through a process. So.
I think that it's a really good proposal that Fulcrum Arts presented. It's well thought out. It's well designed. It presents exciting potential for use of that property. I was disappointed to see that Clayworks pulled out, because I would have preferred to have some choice in making a decision. The 2 projects that are presented, or that were presented, one of them is essentially a private entity and collaboration. It seems to be 2 artists who want to use that for private enterprise, whereas the Clayworks proposal seemed much more inclusive and much broader. Before I can make any sort of decision, however, I don't know at this point what the board's goal is with respect to use of this building, and what the town's goal is with respect to use of this building. I've been here and listening to the discussions for a period of almost 2 years on the board, and I don't recall ever having a discussion about what we want to do with this building and why, and what role it should play in the town as a whole. And so it's very hard for me to vote in favor of going ahead and entering into contract negotiations without knowing what it is that our plan is, at least in general, for doing with this building.
The purpose, and I think that was, the idea was that the Union Station project had some type of reuse of the building. It never specified what or anything. When we came before the board, I had the recommendation that we look for proposals for how the building might be used, because I didn't believe that there isn't any town offices or et cetera that would go in there. And at this point, the town investing in redevelopment of that building didn't seem to make a lot of sense with other projects that we had going on. So the idea was to put it out for proposals to say who would want to reuse this building, what could it be reused for. It was a broad request, and so that it was kind of casting a larger net to see what we might get in. The issue is you're still looking for people who have some amount of funding that would be able to successfully redevelop the building. It's not a piece of property that we can currently sell because of how we acquired it and how it was acquired. And so in ways, I had hoped that in some ways we would be able to find someone would be interested in coming redeveloping it in a way that would maintain its historic integrity, in a way that it would continue to be open to public. And I think in this way, it does do that. You can't have you're not going to find someone who's going to come and redevelop it and then not have some business operating out of it, because that's what municipalities do, and we've already determined we couldn't do it. So that was it, and these were the proposals we got.
Is there any, it was not clear to me from reviewing the proposal whether the town is going to be incurring expense in connection with its ownership of the project or the property, or whether it's going to be generating revenue, or whether it's essentially a wash that we would be leasing the property essentially rent-free, not generating anything, not incurring anything.
We didn't have anything in there because that's all part of negotiating. What I would recommend, if the board is interested in pursuing contract talks with Fulcrum Arts, that we would have 1 to 2 members of the board involved with those discussions.
Dora?
I agree with David. I never supported the idea of putting the RFP out at that time because I don't feel, I just heard Barb describe what she envisions for the space, but we haven't had that public conversation about what the citizens in the town really envision for the space, but yet now when we talked about this and we talked about putting the RFP out, there were people who said, "Oh, but when we get the proposals, that'll be the public discussion." Well, now we're down to one proposal. That's not a real public discussion. That's do we go with the one that we have, or do we not go with the one that we have? And I do think that there's some questions that have come up that I don't want dealt with in a contract negotiation. I want some things clarified before we enter into contract negotiation, and so there were definitely some things that came up. I have concerns about taking what is really a really good economically viable project business and putting it in a public space, which I would hope would lend itself more to something that might need a little more help, would be able to put the money into doing the renovations and and doing more of a graduated sort of that would be a more public type of project. I love these guys. I love their work, and I'd love to see them downtown. I just, from a public standpoint, considering this was bought with taxpayer money, and and it's a project, we really should be finding a way to include the citizens in thinking about how that space is going to be used.
Barb?
A couple of responses. One is the RFP came before the board for approval, and it came before the board more than once. Mm-hmm. So the process, I think, was before the board. To say that was my idea of what I see is to say that that's what the RFP called for. This is the same number of people. I didn't see it in the capital improvement plan, monies to go to this building. We've owned this building since 2006. So we can, absolutely, as I said, you've got options before you. You don't have to take that proposal that's before you. You can say, we're going to put it out again. You can start the process over. You're in the budget process. I'm more than happy if you want to look at putting money into the building. You can, do whatever. But if I would hope then at the next meeting that the board has on their agenda an item that says, we need discussion of the full process and of the building, because I get frustrated every time I hear somebody say, "Well, I was never for this."
Christopher?
I agree that the proposal is a solid proposal coming from people who know what they're doing and have a proven record. I see this building as having been an albatross around the town's neck in a very sensitive area that has tremendous opportunity or tremendous promise as something like the heart of downtown. I think that we are amazingly fortunate to have someone willing to go in and work on that building and make it a productive property that makes that part of town even more attractive than it has already become, with the new restaurant, with the museum, with Marlborough College, the new co-op, the new housing, the Latches Arts initiative, many of these being more than a decade old. It's almost like a capstone opportunity for the development of more jobs and further cementing of the arts in the Brattleboro area in a sensible plan that isn't going to cost the town money. It looks to me like a triple net benefit to the town. I am very much in favor of accepting this because it's as though we had an offer on a silver platter. Were I to vote tonight, it would be an unqualified yay. If there needs to be further discussion so that we make a decision that continue this to December 4th, I'm okay with that. But I'm on the record as being very enthusiastic about this, and I think that we would not be wise to be really leaning toward accepting it with the information that we have.
Well, I would agree a little bit with Christopher, I mean, I think the board was clear that the municipality and this property did not have funds that it was willing to put into a building when we have other needs and priorities for the municipality. Now, the RFP goes out. I think there were 8 or 9 people that looked at the property or more, and we end up with 2 proposals. We could have ended up with 5. The number is arbitrary. We end up with 2. One withdraws. The one that we have is an extremely solid proposal. We interviewed the candidates this evening. Everybody on the board had an opportunity to query the prospective tenant, and I thought that she did an excellent job in her narrative of the use of the property, its public access. And so the trepidation here to go back to what? I think that we have followed a good process. Everybody has had an opportunity to weigh in along the way to say, nope, let's stop. And then here we are rounding third, and then, you know, because someone else pulled out, it's almost like we're going to penalize them for not having another choice to choose and going back to square one and saying, okay, let's put the RFP back out there and see if we can garner other support, other potential tenants. I don't think that's fair to the people that went through the process, and then here we are, and they go, if you don't believe that it's a good project, that's one thing, but I think it's a pretty solid project, and it followed what we put out there. It's not that, you know, we heard them say they scrambled to get their proposal in. And there was question about, at one meeting, about extending the timeline. And I think that we ended up extending it for a couple of weeks. And back in July, when we talked about setting the date. So I would be very disappointed if we didn't at least enter into some sort of contract talks with Fulcrum Arts. Dora?
Well, I was just going to say that I believe David raised this issue of discussing the vision, as did I, when we discussed the RFP, and we talked about how we should have a meeting in which we discuss it. And at that time, it said, well, you know, we can have that discussion when we're looking at the projects. Well, we're looking at the project, and we have a project, but that doesn't mean that the project necessarily matches a particular vision that might be had for that space. And I don't think we have articulated that. It's, you know, it's we put out an RFP without actually having a vision, and we're hoping that something was going to come about, but that doesn't, you know, that doesn't, it still doesn't excuse the fact that we haven't had that discussion yet.
May I? Let's just take a look at the town plan. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we've reviewed the latest draft. Let's take a look at the goals that I think that we agreed on as a group. To promote public appreciation, participation, dialogue, and support for the invaluable contribution that arts and culture makes to Brattleboro's economic vitality and quality of life. It's a check. This project would do that. Create a sense of community through the expansion of arts and cultural opportunities in the community. Check. build an administrative and financial structure to support community art endeavors. That's not really applicable here. Nurture the integration of art, architecture, and landscape architecture in Brattleboro. Big check. And build a strong and viable arts and creative industry sector. Another check. I'd say, that as far as the town plan goes, this falls amply within. And there's been plenty of opportunity to discuss everything that we want to accomplish with the arts in Brattleboro. We have this fabulous opportunity put right in front of us, and now we're nitpicking. I'm frankly disgusted.
We're not nitpicking. There's a lot of issues and there's a lot of questions. You know,
I don't think so.
You've obviously made up your mind.
Yes.
There's a lot of sort of questions and things that need to be, you know, dealt with. And I'm not comfortable with the idea. First of all, I'm not comfortable with the idea of having everything be in contract negotiations, because contract negotiations are things that happen behind closed doors, and I'm not comfortable with some of the things, you know, being hammered out in that setting. I mean, there's certain aspects of even this proposal that, like the idea of building an addition in a place where we're not entirely sure whether or not an addition can be built. I mean, these are questions that, you know, that should be asked and answered before we enter into contract negotiations and before we make a decision. It's not a matter of whether or not the business proposal is solid.
David?
The town owns a series of properties. You know, we own the municipal center, we own Gibson Aiken Center, we own various lands around town, we own the facility where Public Works is located, we own other facilities around town. I may be wrong, but I'm not aware of other situations where we are acting essentially just as a landlord for a for-profit business. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong. But
Dottie's, hospice, museum is a
the
not-for-profit.
garage, so the parking garage.
The parking garage.
The
and then
parking garage.
And then the three.
But the
and then
parking
two
garage
bedrooms.
was a separately designated and developed facility with businesses that were then let on the first floor. Now, I just have not heard any particular vision articulated for why this property was acquired as it was, and then how the property was intended to be used. And that was the concern that I raised. What was the plan for how this property was going to be used? I understand that the request, there wasn't one. And so I'm being asked to evaluate whether to enter into contract negotiations with this particular business without any particular vision having been articulated for how the property is going to be used. I may be in favor of this, I may vote in favor of it, but I'm a little concerned about the absence of a vision having been articulated for this building as a whole. And I hear what you say, Chris, about the art section of the town plan, but I don't think that's really directly relevant to the question we're being asked here. I mean, we may want to support the arts in one way or another, but to say that we own this property and therefore should be letting it out for that purpose, I don't think that answers the question at all.
I can't disagree with that, but I also just have to ask, why did we do the RFP? I don't recall there being 2 votes against the request for proposals, and I wish that would have occurred. I wish, I'm going to go back and check. I wish that would have occurred, because embarrassing, because now, I mean, you're essentially, what I'm hearing is we're starting over. And if we're going to start over, that's fine. I say in here, you can reject them, you can accept it, you can reject them all, you can demolish the building. So that's fine.
I mean, I just haven't heard anybody on the board really articulate what's the plan for this property, other than we've put out an RFP for potential uses, and we've got one proposal now. And do we now want to accept this one proposal? It seems like a good proposal. I agree with that. But what's the plan?
Yeah,
Sure.
Barb, I'm going to query you. Why has that building not been demolished already? Wasn't there some problem we had in our
No.
in the
The
grant
union
funding
came in,
that?
the Union Station
Yeah, the Union Station
Committee-
project. Yeah.
The Union Station Committee came before the board at one point and said they were recommending the demolition of the gasworks building, but not the, because of the cost to rehabilitate that was excessive. But that at this point they would keep the archery building up and see because of its historic history.
Because it's a historic building.
Yes.
Okay. So, we had pretty solid input such that it was seen as a historic building that should stand, and we, in order to take advantage of
At one
that...
point, there was a discussion about having it be the Waypoint Center. I don't know when the Waypoint Center, in my recollection of being here, has verbally been in 6 different places in town.
Yeah, there was a discussion about
And,
that.
you know.
At least one person wanted it to be the train
And the
station.
board, I'll be I believe that I believe the board has the responsibility of deciding how they want the property to be used, what the vision is. But again, I think you have to be really clear with whether or not you are going to fund that vision. And I think that was when my recollection about talking about the RFPs was my concern. One of my concerns was that we were going to get proposals that people were going to get very excited about, but we were never going to be able to fund. My experience has been that has occurred here. And so I'm not sure how the chair wants to move forward with this. So, I mean, I don't know. It doesn't appear as though there should be a vote taken at all. I would request that there not be a vote taken, because if the vote, I would think that there's too much concern. I think there's been concerns by half of the board here tonight that they don't feel that they have enough of a vision. I would hope people wouldn't enter into contract discussions if they don't feel solidly behind it. And so I think the board needs to reassess what it would like to do with the building and keep this option open.
Can I ask, Barb, would the town need to put any money into this as proposed?
That would be all of this is kind of up for discussions. What I was hoping is that there are going to be some expenses that we may have to incur depending on, because we own the property. And if they're, depending on how that might get split. I would say there's also grant funding to pay for some of those things, like the phase 1 and that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not particularly concerned about those issues because it's had so much testing around it. I think one of the things that we talked about, thought we had talked about in the RFP discussions was we didn't put a length of lease, we didn't put different amounts, because I think it was going to depend on, the more people were going to be interested in redeveloping it entirely on their own, would probably figure into a longer lease or a lesser lease. That has been my experience with the town and how it's done it with the 2 properties that were not the transportation center was built, but those properties, the rental units, were actually not upfitted until they had a renter. And they were upfitted 2 very different ways, depending on how the lease was entered in, how the lease was written.
Okay.
David?
I'm prepared to vote in favor of entering into or continuing discussions with Fulcrum Arts. But I remain perplexed about what we're doing and why.
I think the board should have an answer to that for themselves before they...
Well, it may be that continuing discussions with them is a necessary component, because there's not, I mean, other than their vision, how this interacts with the town really is very unclear at this point.
I agree, if I might, that how this interacts with the town is unclear because there has not been a contract negotiated. I think the most efficient way to ascertain that is to enter into formal negotiations with a contract in mind. I feel strongly that we've just been thrown a home run pitch, and if we don't swing at it, I think we're unwise. I don't think we will have done our jobs properly to let something like this go for reasons that can be settled. I see this as an enormous gift, this opportunity to finish developing a key area of town. It's a wonderful, lovely opportunity. Let's move forward and get that formal discussion underway.
Doug?
I'm going to say again that I don't think it's a good idea to be negotiating all of these things in a contract negotiation. A lot of these things are public questions that should be discussed in public and worked out before we enter into a contract negotiation. So I have concerns about
Gonna make a motion.
about that. I still hold fast that, once again, we're going ahead with a project without actually having the real public discussion that should have preceded doing this. And we continue to do this. And people, I hear it from people all the time. It's like, what's the point? Why do we even bother getting involved in town government? Because they're not going to pay any attention to us anyway. And it's sort of, I understand. I understand, the reasoning behind doing this in the first place, and that was to take a building that isn't really having anything done to it and try to figure out a way to have something done to it without using public funds. And I get that, but that still doesn't mean that you take a building that was paid for by public money and is being owned by the public, and a public that's been waiting for years to participate in a process and say what they want to see down there, and we're again turning our backs on the public and saying no, you don't have to be involved, and I just think it's not a good thing for the town.
It's not a good thing for the town.
I'll accept the motion to
Well,
enter into...
what I would hate to do is to take a vote right now and be tied 2-2, which would mean it would go down. And that would be tragic. And I would go away from this meeting feeling ill.
My feeling is that David said he would support entering into continued contract negotiations with Fulcrum. Doesn't mean that we're going to get to a contract.
So the objection then that I hear to moving forward with getting involved with the contract negotiation is that one of our board members wants the various points having to do with the public good discussed in public and not in a private negotiation. Is that right? Does that boil it down to the essence of it?
I think that oversimplifies it substantially,
Yeah.
but I don't want to recap the entire discussion. I move that the board authorize the town manager to continue in discussions with Fulcrum Arts towards negotiation of a potential contract, as outlined in the business plan presented by Fulcrum Arts.
Discussion?
I'm fine with it.
Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 3-1. Thank you.
Next up, Downtown Improvement District. The The town's participation in the Vermont Downtown Program is about to expire March of 2013. So we need to reapply for our downtown designation. That designation is every 5 years. It hadn't been every 5 years, it had been 3 years. And I think it got changed into 5 years. What we were hoping tonight is for there to be two actually kind of separate discussions. And I'd like to start with the first so that I can send Annette home. So that's the application. In addition, in our own town ordinance, under the Downtown Improvement District section, there is a requirement that beginning in 2013, every 5 years following, that there be a vote of the property owners, and that is to say those persons owning commercial property in the downtown district, to see if the town should continue with the special assessment district. And it's the special assessment district that funds that is the general funding, the stable funding for the downtown improvement district. So with that, there was not a lot of detail in the ordinance with how that should be done. And with that, we turned it over to Attorney Bob Fisher and to the person in charge of all of our other elections and ballots, Annette Cappy. With that, I would ask Annette, if you don't mind coming up. And you have a copy of the proposed ballot. Annette is going to talk about what she and Robert, Howard, will answer any questions that you might have in regards to the legalities of this. But Annette will talk about how she proposes that this voting take place, and also I said that we do actually, I believe we do want one motion on this evening on the ballot. We would like you to set the date for when the ballots need to be returned by. That's correct, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. So Annette, with that, if you want to kind of talk about the process.
Okay. Well, the proposal that we came up with, Bob Fisher and Barbara and I, after discussing, was that the downtown district commercial property owners could vote on this by ballot that was mailed to them. So our plan is to mail the ballot, and we have a ballot prepared. I think you have a sample, and a letter to them explaining what the process is, why they're doing this, and request that the ballot be returned no later than 5 p.m. on Tuesday, January 8th. And that would be the deadline. It would have to be back to our office no later than 5 p.m. on January 8th. When the ballots come back, they would not be opened until after 5 o'clock, and then we would open the ballot. So we wouldn't have any idea prior to the deadline how people were voting. And then that's about all there is. We would include an envelope for them to return it to us, and there are approximately, I think there are about 115 properties that would be eligible. Fewer property owners, but that many properties.
Every property, every parcel would get a vote. Mm-hmm. So if you owned 3 parcels, you would have 3 votes. Mm-hmm. That's the proposal.
Yeah.
I understand the reason for the timing, but I'm really concerned about these ballots getting lost in the holiday mail. People open stuff up, they put it aside, gets buried under stuff, they deal with the holidays, and all of a sudden, and I don't know, I know you guys have talked about this a lot, but it seems to me that the timing is really not necessarily good as far as getting good response.
The reason for the timing is that this is an advisory vote to the board for the select board to consider whether or not to continue with the special assessment district. January, the end of January is when special representative town meeting would need to be warned. So we needed to figure out a time with, it had to be kind of within, if it's actually advisory and it's to mean anything, it needs to feed a question. Or it needs to feed that. You could, if you so desired, you can do it whenever you like. In the year, it doesn't specify, but I think that part of the purpose is for it to advise the board on decision making.
Mm-hmm.
So it's up to the board as far as when you would like that information.
If it's helpful, our goal was to mail these by Tuesday and give them plenty of time. If it's helpful, if we get into the process and we get closer to the deadline and haven't received many replies back, we could always send a reminder postcard.
That's good. I'm comfortable with the January 8th deadline, actually. You know, one of the things that I do here is that there's a lot of de facto participation in the DID, that there's a lot of property owners that, you know, it is what it is. So I couldn't even begin to guess what I would think that the number of properties that will be that return these. I'm hoping for, you know, upwards and over 80%. I think this is has financial implications that people get to weigh in. So I'm hoping that people take the time to return the ballot to at least show us what they're feeling in terms of the DID. And again, this is about the downtown district. This is to make people clear. I know there's the downtown organization. There's some people sitting here, but this is not about the downtown organization. This is about the DID district itself.
Just to, one of the things I think it's important for people to realize too is when we do voting, we tend to think of a person. When we talk about ownership of something, we tend to think of a person owning it, and that's not the case. With a lot of the properties, they're not owned by a person. They are an LLC. They may be, you know, may or may not be in the town, and so that was one of the things that Bob and Annette were trying to work through with. Is, you know, Annette's used to having a person come and vote and check that person off. So we don't actually, what we have found in the history of trying to contact actual people who are property owners is like it can be really difficult to get a person, because you get, you know, you may have the property manager who you kind of assume is you talk to as the property owner. They're not the property owner. It's a business somewhere else. So we have, I think if you get an 80% return on these, I would think we'd be in Chicago.
Excuse me?
There you go. Well, I would, at least for this portion, I would accept a motion to send the ballots out by Tuesday, and Tuesday is November 27th. Have them in the mail, and with a return date of January 8th at 5 p.m.
So moved.
Is there going to be some cover correspondence that is going to accompany this ballot?
Yes.
To try to explain a
Yes.
little bit more clearly what's going on?
Yes, there was a letter prepared.
We worked with that
Good.
yesterday to try, and we had Bob look at it to make sure that it was really neutral.
We tried to stay very neutral on that and quote the section in the ordinance that requires this advisory vote. So it
So it's
should
not
give them the
necessary to
context as to why we're asking them to give that advisory vote.
Why is it just advisory?
'Cause that's in-
Further discussion?
I know, I don't.
Anyone
Mr. Chair?
from the public?
Point
Yes.
of clarification, I think you said January 5th and
No,
that
January
January
8th.
8th.
January 8th at 5
At 5,
o'clock.
okay.
Not January 5th, at 8.
Sure.
The Marlboro Select Board member may step up.
Andrea Livermore, Director of Building a Better Brattleboro. So is the question whether or not the property owners want to continue the district or they want to continue the special
Special
assessment?
assessment district,
Okay, so it's really about the tax.
yes.
Because the district has benefits and, of course, there'd be a problem to maybe meet the criteria to keep the district, but that's separate from the tax. So it's really about the tax.
It's the special assessment district.
Okay. So can we get a copy of the letter just to see what it is tonight? I mean, just before we read? That'd be great. I mean, it would just be good for us to see the language. Okay, thanks.
Further questions? All those in favor of the question, the motion on the floor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 4-0. Thank you.
Now, the other part that I started with is that our designation, we're also up for reapplying for the downtown designation. This is an opportunity. Anytime there's a renewal, it's an opportunity to look at the district as it is. This is, although you can change the district boundaries, you can change the organization really at any point in time. This is actually a good time if you're going to be looking at those things to do it because you're filling out the application. You can do it other times in the year, but you have to give notice, et cetera, on that. We tried to give the board a lot of information with regard to, okay, so what does it mean to be a participant in the Vermont Downtown Program? What does the designation mean? We went to the first piece that you have where it says the little picture and it says downtown designation. That is just directly from the website of the downtown programs. And it's just to give you a basis of, okay, what's the downtown, what are we supposed to be doing? What's the program based on? What is the focus of the program? So it talks about the 4-point approach as well as the National Trust Main Street. The next thing then is the actual application. That's the next 6 pages. They're numbered 1 through 6 at the top right corner. This is to just to let you know, okay, what kind of things are they asking for. This is the actual this would be the first time application. We are obviously reapplying, but a lot of the things, I think most of the things are the same really. And so that kind of gives you that information. This is what Patrick says in his memo to me. We have asked Rod Francis to kind of start looking at this application. Because there are some things we need to get. It's not due until March. But again, because of the timing of that, that's also right before town meeting. And at town meeting is when when normally there's a special assessment on it, and it's when the downtown organization comes before you with their work plan and with their budget. The next page is where it says Downtown Improvement District Town, and then Downtown Improvement District Designated Downtown Program. This is how the work to complete this application has been split up. So town is staff. And it is, again, as I said, we've asked Rod Francis to take this up as the lead on this, and Patrick's kind of coordinating it, making sure that things are getting done. These are the things that we need to do. just so that you know. And then the next page where it says Downtown Improvement District dash designated downtown program, those are things that we have asked BABB as our current downtown organization to work on. And actually all three of those things are things that would be coming before the board within the next month anyway for the special assessment district. So those should easily be done. You have then a map of the downtown designation district, of the downtown district. One of the things that has come up in prior representative town meetings has been the suggestion from the floor of town meeting to extend the district to include Park Place. You'll see how it ends now, kind of takes where it works around, can't read that street up there, the darker shaded area. And there's been suggestions at least at 3 town meetings that I can remember, although I don't think it has occurred at the last 1 or 2, to increase that to add Park Place in there. And so when you look at this map, part of what we're hoping that you will look at is say, does this still make sense?
Well, just thinking about the map, I know that part of the reason why it's been suggested to extend it to Park Place is the feeling that there's commercial buildings over there that it's not fair that other people pay the tax and they don't. And I remember hearing that conversation. It hasn't come up. I don't think it came up in the most recent meeting, certainly, but it definitely has come up multiple times. The other is that one property on Grove that's not a commercial property that, that's been mentioned, that should be.
That was taken out of the assessment.
Was it taken? Well,
yes, it was.
But it's not. But isn't it still? Because the map is part of our. I mean, we haven't changed the map. It may have been taken out of the. As a.
If it's not a commercial property.
The map is your geographical area. The properties within it that are taxed are your commercial properties within that geographical boundary. So those are two different things. So if you have a residential property on Main Street, that wouldn't be taxed if it was purely residential.
It's only commercial properties, and that's why the vote is only for commercial property owners.
But just in that particular case on Grove Street, since it's at the end of that line anyway, doesn't it make sense to just change the border? I don't know.
Well, the property in question was taken off the assessment, and so I mean, the boundary line there really has no bearing. That's the one up by the Masonic Temple, I think, that Dora is talking about.
No, it's the one that there's. I don't know. It's the one beyond the building that's behind the church building. I think is the one that Steve Phillips used to talk about it, and I can't tell from this map as to whether or not it's. It just. There's also been a suggestion that we extended up Canal Street too. I don't necessarily.
I think the issue has always been a concern about how big the district could be or should be.
And again, if the board is interested in having kind of those discussions, we'd be happy to. One of the reasons we're bringing it up now is so that if there are questions tonight, we can look for answers or get additional information, and that we just. There's already kind of a lot of information that gets presented without.
Most of the commercial properties up Canal Street are more apartment buildings. once you get past, I mean, how far up Canal Street are you talking?
Well, I'm
You know,
I'm just saying that's
you have to get up
that's
almost to
come
the
up.
intersection before you hit the auto Portland glass and all of those, other than the
Sporties.
sporties.
40s.
So,
I mean,
yes.
I think what Barbara's suggesting is, you know, I mean, I was going to say that, I mean, we have to at least have one public hearing, right? And a public hearing related to this, and I mean, we should
Not us, no.
but we should have at least, if we're not going to have a public hearing, we should at least have one public meeting where we put out notices to the town, and particularly make sure we put it out to downtown businesses and property owners to have that discussion, as well as the downtown organization, to have that discussion about what works, what doesn't work, should there be any changes to the map. You know, I mean, if we're supposed to assess this, we should be assessing it.
Andrew?
Actually, can I just check what we have?
I think one of the things to keep in mind about expanding the district is there's the one piece, which certainly there's more properties that can contribute to the special assessment, which is great. But the other side of it, is, I think, is from the planning perspective of giving properties access to the benefits of the district, which primarily is the tax credits program. And if we feel like having the tax credits program available to commercial property owners so that they will, you know, invest money in their building, because it's really an incentive for people to do things like put in sprinkler systems and elevators and those kinds of things. And if we want those resources to be available to some of those properties on the periphery, that might also be a reason to expand the district. So there's sort of the two sides. There's the, you know, the bringing money in and offering the benefits to an expanded district to improve the area around the downtown. So that's a good thing to remember.
If I'm understanding it correctly, defining the boundaries of the downtown district does not necessarily define the boundaries of the DID. Am I correct in that? That's
No.
what I, okay, so
No, you
if
have-
you make the downtown district, then
downtown
you're
improvement
automatically in the
district is
DID.
the downtown
Okay,
improvement
I just wanted to
district.
clarify that, because I thought that's what I heard you say.
The boundaries of the, are you,
The properties taxed within the boundary are only the commercial properties that are taxed as part of the special assessment. But the actual downtown district is the same geographical area. Right.
This is why we need.
So if you have a single-family house that happens to be smack downtown, that doesn't get taxed, but it's still within the boundary of the district. And then on page, if I might just add, with respect to the debate as to expanding the district, on page 3 of that handout are the factors that go into coming up with your map and what needs to be on the map. But factors that go into that, you know, how dense it is, multi-story buildings, whether people walk there, etc. So you can go down through that list, and that's sort of your test, so to speak, as to whether you'd be expanding it, for instance, up to Park Place. Are those people that, let's say, walk downtown for lunch? You know, same for if you're going to try to go up Canal Street, you know, do the people at Burton walk downtown for lunch? You know, so, I mean, that's not the only factor, but that list gives you a good sense of how you would weigh that.
I think those are only commercial buildings in Park Place. I'm trying to think if there's
no residential.
There's no residential
Right.
buildings in the Park Place configuration.
the last thing then that the board has is the actual ordinance. Always an opportunity. It's created by the town, it can be amended by the town. So to look at that, it also then calls into play what the rights and responsibilities of the organization and the creation of the special assessment district. and reporting requirements. So with that, I don't know how much, I don't know if there are questions that members have. I don't know if there, we could start this at a very kind of rudimentary level, which is, do we want to do it? You can, and then, okay, yes, we do. Okay, if we want to do this, if we want to reapply because the benefits of the district. Okay, does the current configuration make sense? Does the current organizational structure make sense? No. Or you can just say, let's renew it. So it's kind of up to the board on where you want to go with this. We're looking for some guidance.
You've presented a series of questions, and I think that it would be useful for the administration to organize those questions that you've just identified, and then come back probably with the planning director and with a representative from the designated agency to address those questions and to make any proposals you may have about changes that we might endorse. So you've now presented us with the background documentation. Next, I'd like to hear a list of those questions and answers to those questions from the administration's perspective.
How'd I get the homework?
You listed the questions, Barb.
Dora?
I just want to go back to the idea of a public meeting, and maybe that should happen after the vote. Maybe, but when we're assessing this, there needs to be reach out to particularly the members of that downtown district, which are downtown businesses and residents and property owners, and to make sure that they have all of this information so that they can present thoughts about expansion of the district, whether they, I'm sure that there are lots of ideas that have been bantied about over the years, and this is people's opportunity to be able to say, hey, we think this should be changed in the ordinance for this reason. This is a tax district. It's a public entity, and I think even if we're not required to have a public hearing, that we should be organizing this so that we're at least having one public meeting. Now, whether that's part of BAB comes to the downtown organization comes to present their things, or whether that's a separate piece, we definitely should have some sort of reach out to that community and find out what they're. One of the criticisms the last time around was people felt that they didn't have any input. So let's make sure that they get input so that they can't, so that they can't be critical. They'll have an opportunity to have some input.
Response?
I was very involved when this whole project first came before the town, and I will reiterate what I say all the time. It was a cooperative, collective process. Members of Select Board met with many members of the downtown businesses who were interested in forming a downtown organization. It came about the same time that the state was in the process of using designated downtowns for funding. It all worked, and there was a lot of give and take, and it didn't happen in a closed-door office and then given to a bunch of people to read. It was done really in a very open way so that the town and the group the BABB worked together in partnership to create what we thought was best for everyone. You have to remember that the DID came later. The downtown district came first. And as, I mean, you know, well, what I
That
have...
doesn't make any sense. You need to
But it did. Well, it did.
clarify
It seems to me, yeah, you know, my memory gets fuzzy, especially after this long evening, and I will apologize. But it seems to me that the order is
BABB
that
as an organization existed.
came along right as the town. It was a process that we were involved in totally on a very regular basis, trying to fill in the blanks of the forms and the regulations that the state was requiring to, number one, get designation, all of that. All I'm saying is that there was an administrative part of it. The select board was intimately involved, many of them, many members of Building a Better Brattleboro, and probably others were intimately involved in trying to get to this point. And I'm just saying that we're here at the table to be partners, to do what we can, and I just wanted to remind everyone, and what I was saying, Barb, is that if I'm wrong, correct me, please, but it seems to me that we had the designated downtown district with BABB as the downtown organization before
we had the special assessment
before you had the
district.
special assessment
Right,
district.
because 2 years prior to that, the town
Right.
used CDBG funding and gave $40,000 each year
Right.
for
And
the
so-
funding, and then we needed
I
to
just
get
want to
more
put it in,
stable
yeah.
funding
Just
source,
wanted to
right.
put it in perspective that there was a collective participation on getting the special, getting the designation, and then there was the part that BABB has, and I just want to open it up again to say, if you want our participation and we would like to be at the table, please let us know if there are meetings, if there are ways that Andrea or myself or any of the other Kate, any of the other board members can put input into this process. So, thank you.
Got my assignments.
There you go. Okay, thank you.
Town plan, public hearing.
Now?
Yeah?
Next up on the agenda. I believe you were going to open a public hearing, but then continue it.
Yeah. So I am going to open the public hearing on the town plan. And then we are going to continue it. And my recommendation is December 12th.
Before we decide on that date, is there a plan right now for when we are next meeting to talk about the budget?
Yes, well, I'm going
I'd
to
like to know
mention
that before we
Well,
address this.
my plan for the budget would be to meet on Monday, December 3rd, either in the morning or in the afternoon, and then a Saturday meeting on December 8th in the morning.
Fine.
What was the first date again?
I'd be,
Sorry.
I'd be
December
happy with morning
3rd.
meetings.
Number 3.
Morning meetings would be best for me, but evening on the 3rd is fine, after 6. At 6
Well,
or
you know my preference.
David, do you have
David's looking at the calendar.
I prefer to respond about those dates when I have my calendar in front of me.
Well, let us know. Yeah, just let Jan know. Those would be tentative dates.
Meeting on the 8th, break by noon.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
Well, we've had full day ones. So
Yeah, well, with
I'm not available afternoon on the 8th.
no, that would be definitely the plan to be. My feeling is after the meeting on the 3rd,
Oh, I know what it is. The 3rd, we have a meeting from 3:30 to 5 o'clock.
yes, we do.
We do? The 3rd?
No,
December 3rd?
David and I.
Oh,
And that's my concern about timing. Maybe we can meet right after that. I can do it right after.
Yeah, 5:30.
Yeah.
5:30?
Yeah,
Isn't that December
5:30.
10?
I might be a little late.
Is it the 10th or
That's
is it the
okay.
3rd?
5:45?
Yeah,
It's the 10th, all right, I'm wrong, it's the 10th.
No, the 3rd is, the 3rd and then the 8th in the
No,
morning.
I know what the 3rd is. I know what the 3rd is.
Are you good?
I don't know what time is. I think I have to be around to. Morning, I could.
You can meet in the morning on the 3rd?
I could.
7:30 to 9. But I have to
Okay.
I have to leave
Seven-
at 5 to 9. I have to be over.
7:30 to 9.
7:30 to 9, it's fine.
7:30 to 9 on December 3rd, and that's budget.
Woody, do you have all these issues too when you're trying to schedule your budget meetings? There you go.
And then the 8th in the morning?
Then the
is that
8th in the morning would be 8 to
from
noon. 8 to noon.
8 to noon. Thank you.
8.
We'll start 7 if you want.
That's 7's fine with
7
me.
works for me.
6 works too.
You can do it, sunshine.
Okay. So then, can we go back to the town plan?
Yeah,
Is that open?
yeah. So the town plan is, I would continue that until December 12th. And at that meeting,
What time?
5:30, and I'm hoping that at that point,
Oh, I'm not available till 12 in the evening.
that evening you're not,
Not available till 12.
We talked about putting this off until January.
yeah, but I would, you know what, I'd
Really
like
ought not
to,
to.
I'd like to get these, there's 3 small ones that I think we can finish up, and then we have the land use, which may take a meeting or more. So if we can get one meeting in between now and the first of the year.
Sorry about the 12th. 13th I can do, but not the 12th.
The 13th works for me too, I just put it on the,
The 13th,
13th.
at what time?
13th is another Wyndham Regional that
13th at what time?
can't schedule meetings twice for the Wyndham Regional Executive Board.
well, if we do it on the 13th, we can't do those public meetings in the morning, so it would have to
Evening's
be
fine.
5:30. Huh?
Evening's fine with me.
Yeah.
But the Executive Board Wyndham Regional is 7 o'clock.
So we'll let you leave at 7 o'clock. 5:30 to, we'll let you leave. We're hoping that we're going to get through the next 3 up are, Barb, you have your town plan. in
Municipal
front of you.
facilities, natural resources, and there's another one.
Yeah, so,
Transportation.
Cultural and historic.
Historic.
yeah, so I don't see those taking a long time. So I'm pretty sure that we
You
can.
don't think the flood, colonial erosion stuff and natural resources will?
Well, don't forget, we're looking at making possible recommendations, and then at that last meeting, go up or down, so. 13th?
13th, yeah, in the evening?
Okay.
Tell me the time.
13th, 5:30,
5:30 till,
7 o'clock,
and this is
town plan.
town plan.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
A motion to adjourn to a specific date.
Yeah, as soon as the public hearing is opened, I'll make that motion.
Public hearing is open.
I did open a public
All
hearing.
right, I move to continue the public hearing on the town plan from now until 5:30 PM on 12/13/12.
All those in favor,
Aye.
signify by saying aye. 4-0, okay.
Last bit of business is to appoint Martin Webster to the Tree Advisory Committee.
Move to appoint Martin Webster to the Tree Advisory Committee.
For the term ending June 30th, 2013.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed. Meetings.
No. Can we read that?
Real quick.
Yeah.
Where will the-
Thursday, November 22nd. We're closed on Thursday. We're closed on Friday. On Monday, November 26th at 5:30 p.m., the CPCC Citizen Police Communication Committee will meet at the Brooks Memorial Library Community Room. Tuesday, November 27th, the Traffic Safety Committee will meet from 8:30 in the Select Board Meeting Room. At 4:30 p.m., the Finance Committee will meet in the Select Board meeting room. At 5:15 p.m., also on the 27th, Conservation Commission will meet in the Hannah. And at 6:30 p.m., the Human Services Review Committee will meet at a place to be determined. On Monday, December 3rd, the Energy Committee is going to meet in the Hannah Cosman at 5 p.m. On December 4th at 6:15 p.m. is a regular Select Board meeting. Also at 6:30 on December 4th, the Human Services Review Committee will be meeting, and again, a place to be determined. And that is it. Not a lot of meetings.
All right, I will accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? 4-0. Thank you, board members. Lively discussions here this evening.
Yeah. No.